It may not look like much, but the 2023 Chevrolet Bolt EUV is one of the greatest values on the road today. And here is why this Chevy is the electric vehicle to get if you are on a budget. There are plenty of things to like about this battery-powered crossover, but a new lower price is the #1 thing in my book. Now this happens to be a 2022 Premier model, but for 2023, Chevrolet slashed the price of both the Bolt hatchback and the Bolt EUV. They dropped it by $6,300, which makes both of these cars a screaming deal, especially in a world with out-of-control inflation and ever-rising costs. With no options, a base 2023 model starts at about $28 grand, including $995 in destination fees, which is a screaming deal. Now, a similarly equipped 2023 Premier trim version is going to go for about $37,000 and change, which of course is still a great deal. Another reason to love the Bolt EUV is the interior. This cabin is roomy, it's comfortable, and surprisingly well built. 2 color schemes are offered. You can get black, or as we have here, light gray. There are lovely soft plastics here on the dashboard and door panels. They're of a low sheen, so they look pretty premium. And the build quality in here is excellent. Everything fits together as it should and feels really tight, except for the standard issue GM control stalks that feel like they're gonna snap off in your hands when you go to change lanes or turn the wipers on. This Premier model's front chairs are decent. They're not the most comfortable things I've ever sat in before, but they are pretty good. Plus, they're heated and ventilated. Plus, passengers in the outboard rear positions have butt warmers too. For adult passengers, there's plenty of headroom and legroom in the back seat. And the cargo area might surprise you. There's more than 16 cubic feet normally configured, and then nearly 57 cubes with the rear backrest folded. No, it's not going to outshine an S-Class, but GM's designers did an excellent job with the Bolt EUV's interior, and the same can be said of this vehicle's tech. Every version comes standard with a 10.2-inch central touchscreen that is home to an infotainment system that absolutely flies. Not only is this multimedia array very intuitive, it is incredibly responsive. It almost never stutters or lags as you're clicking on icons or swiping through menus. Naturally, this vehicle also comes with Apple Carplay and Android Auto. Both smartphone mirroring systems can connect wirelessly, which is always super convenient. Plus, we have a wireless charging pad in here, so your phone is always fully juiced. The main touchscreen is augmented by a smaller 8-inch digital instrument cluster. This is very crisp and easy to read. Plus, the menus are dead simple to cycle through, though it does look just a little bit cheesy. 2 other things I really like about this vehicle. One is the backup camera system. It is high definition, it is super crisp, it looks amazing, and it has a whole bunch of different settings you can adjust so you can see exactly where you're going. I love that. The second thing that's great, physical climate control buttons right here on the dashboard. I can adjust the fan speed, turn the seat heater on without having to dive through 6 menus in the infotainment system. I love that. But without a doubt, my favorite tech feature in the Bolt EUV is Super Cruise, which I am using right now. This, of course, is GM's groundbreaking hands-free driving aid. This technology, of course, debuted a few years ago at Cadillac, but GM is finally spreading the love around to its other divisions, and this is great news for value-minded shoppers that are looking for an EV, even if the Bolt EUV isn't necessarily a great road trip car because of its slow charging. Now, this is not the latest and greatest version of Super Cruise. The vehicle will not automatically change lanes, and you can't tow with it. I mean, not that anyone's going to drag a trailer with a Bolt, but still, the system currently works on some 200,000 miles of approved roadway in the US and Canada. That is limited access, divided highways. And when the conditions are right, you just hit a button, and then you can sit back and relax because the vehicle is basically doing all of the work on its own. It's controlling its speed, and it's doing the steering to keep you locked in the middle of the lane. And I've got to say, it works brilliantly. Now, of course, you do have to pay attention. There's a driver monitoring camera on the steering column there that keeps track of what you're doing, so you can't go down and look at your phone, you can't eat a ham sandwich or whatever. You've got to be ready to take over because there are situations where the car will request that you drive. Let's say it's snowing and the lines on the road are covered. The camera can't see them, the camera can't keep you in the middle of your lane if that's the case. You also may be going through a construction zone. The system may ask you to take over again at that point. So you've got to be active, you've got to be aware of what's going on. Still, this system is immediately confidence-inspiring. About a minute after turning it on, you're sitting back with your arms crossed because it's just that good. It feels rock solid and it's incredibly smooth. GM knocked it out of the park with Super Cruise, and I've got to say, this system is way smoother than Ford's Blue Cruise, which tends to wander a lot in its lane. It doesn't like turns in the road, and it disengages a lot more frequently than Super Cruise. Another reason to love the Bolt EUV is that it offers respectable range. With a full battery, the EPA says this vehicle should be able to go 247 miles between charges. Now, that's more than a 2023 Nissan Leaf SV Plus. The Chevy also tops nearly every version of the Toyota BZ4X, and the BZ4X, of course, is a slightly larger vehicle than this, so you would expect it to have more range, even though it generally does not. As for other rivals, the Hyundai Kona Electric and the 2023 Kia Niro EV both have slightly more range than this Chevy, but the difference is just a couple miles. As you've seen, there are plenty of reasons why the Chevy Bolt EUV gives you the most bang for your buck in the EV world, but it is not perfect. Aside from these control stalks that feel super cheap, there are a few things about this vehicle that I do not like, and I'll tell you all about them as soon as I remind you to subscribe to the EV Pulse YouTube channel for more reviews like this one, plus smart discussions and analysis of the latest EV news. Make sure you hit that like button as well, because it really helps us out. As for things I could do without, this Chevy's driving dynamics are totally meh. I mean, there's nothing to love about the steering, which is numb, the brake pedal feels rubbery, and the acceleration isn't all that great. All that being said, the Bolt EUV's performance is perfectly fine for everyday use. This thing has 200 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque, which is enough for it to get from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7 seconds, which is perfectly adequate. But I've got to say, the Bolt EUV never feels zippy the way other EVs do. There's never a big surge of torque. It just kind of moseys along when you hit the accelerator. The Bolt EUV comes with an 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger, which is very good. AC charging at home from a 48 amp circuit will get you about 37 miles of range per hour, and that's quick enough to completely fill the battery in about 7 hours, which is pretty standard stuff these days. Unfortunately though, this car's DC fast charging performance is another thing to dislike, because it tops out at just 55 kilowatts, which is laughably slow for the 2023 model year. Of course, your mileage will vary, but GM claims that's still enough to get you about 95 miles of range in 30 minutes. And for that reason, the Bolt EUV is far from an ideal road trip vehicle. It's much better suited for local, around-town use. Finally, one other thing I don't care for is this Chevy's styling. Now, in the grand scheme of things, looks don't matter that much with cars, but from nearly every angle, this crossover is kind of a frump. Tall, narrow, and stubby, the proportions are just not all that flattering. I'm sorry to say, this vehicle is about as stylish as a baggy pair of overalls. Other electrics like the Ford Mustang Mach-E, Tesla Model Y, and even the upcoming Chevy Equinox EV are all far more attractive, at least to me. Thanks to its lovely cabin, excellent interior tech, respectable range, available Super Cruise, and clearance sale pricing, I think the 2023 Chevrolet Bolt EUV is the best deal in the electric vehicle world right now. If you don't mind the looks and aren't planning any cross-country trips, take one of these things for a test drive. I think you'll be impressed too.